I, Dr. Pallavi Saxena, SSC member of iLEAPS, and Dr. Samina, Project Administrator iLEAPS, welcomes you all on the occasion of our eighth talk in iLEAPS Global Colloquium Series, Episode 4. With a very good response received from the participants as well as from the speakers, we decided to start this series in 2025 also. We have started this Colloquium series in 2022, and then we continued in 23, 24, and then in 25. So before I go further, let me give you a very brief introduction about what the iLEAPS is. So iLEAPS is Integrated Land Ecosystem Atmosphere Processes Study, which is a global research project of Future Earth. It provides understanding of how interacting physical, chemical, and biological processes transport and transform energy and matter through the land atmosphere interface. The prime purpose of this colloquium is to introduce the scientific society people with the distinguished and significant work of eminent scientists from different parts of the world. It is a very bright opportunity, particularly for early career researchers, to interact with the distinguished speakers and establish the bridge between the ideas and the knowledge through this platform. So today we have our speaker, Dr. Helena Varkkey, who is an associate professor and associate professor of political ecology at the Department of International and Strategic Studies, University Malaya, Malaysia. Her areas of expertise include transboundary haze governance in Southeast Asia and global palm oil politics. Her monograph on the haze problem in Southeast Asia, palm oil and politics was published by Routledge in 2016. Her latest book is an edited volume of case studies titled Governing the Palm Oil Industry Perspectives from Southeast Asia and Latin America, which is also published by the same publisher in 2024. Dr. Helena has almost 2 decades of experience in qualitative research, including conducting fieldwork, interviews, and focus groups among various government and non-government stakeholders, and has built up extensive research works in countries across ASEAN. She has edited and produced reports for the Academy of Sciences Malaysia, UNICEF, and the ASEAN Secretariat. She is currently a fellow of the Indo-Pacific Leadership Lab program organized by East-West Center in Hawaii. So today she will talk about that the seasons of Anthropocene and what is a politicization of the haze season in the South Asia. She also will explain about the understanding about these politicized seasonalities, which is essential for societies and how to move forward in a livable future. So, Dr. Helena, the floor is all yours. I again welcome you to share your insights on this very important topic.
Okay, thank you so much, and hello everyone. So I'm speaking to you from Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Happy to be here. I understand that maybe the audience today is more of atmospheric scientists or other types of scientists. So I hope today's talk will be interesting for you. I will be approaching it more from a social science, political science angle. But I believe our area of interest is still similar, yeah, atmospheric, the study of the atmosphere. And uh, for me in particular is about air pollution in Southeast Asia. Yeah, so I will try and share my screen. Okay, So I hope that it's visible. Yeah. Okay. So I will proceed. Today I have decided to talk to you or to share with you about a paper that was recently published in the Singapore Journal of Tropical Geography, and the title of the paper is "Seasons of the Anthropocene: Politicization of the Haze Season in Southeast Asia." So this idea of seasons of the Anthropocene is something that me and my colleagues, Felicia and Tom Smith, we have kind of been playing around with. It's not an entirely new concept, but we have tried to apply this to what is happening in Southeast Asia. So this is actually the second paper in this series, and I'm involved in this paper. I was not involved in the first paper, but I'm happy to share what we have learned so far. Uh, Yep. Okay, so here's just some visualizations in case some of you are not from Southeast Asia who are not familiar with the issue of haze in Southeast Asia. So haze is basically what we call the air pollution that comes primarily from forest fires, yeah, biomass burning in the region. So if you see the map on the left here, you can see this is actually a close-up of Sumatra and the surrounding area. And you can see the red dots, they are actually the hotspots. And you can see they are spread out quite broadly across. Most of these hotspots represent fires. And most of these fires are actually peatland fires. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with the intricacies of peatland fires. But basically, just very quickly, peatland fires produce smoke that is very biomass rich and very small in dimensions and very potent, and they can travel across broad areas. Yeah, so the map that you see here actually is an attempt to visualize the extent of the smoke that can travel from these fires. During really bad times, smoke can actually affect up to 7 Southeast Asian countries. So there's a total of 10 Southeast Asian countries in this region, and it basically can blanket almost the whole area when it's really bad. So the fires from mostly Indonesia, Malaysia also has some fires of their own, but the majority of it is in Indonesia. It mainly affects on a normal year. In a normal year, Malaysia, Singapore, sometimes Brunei, yeah, and it can go beyond if it's worse. And the pictures on the right is actually how it looks like. Yeah, so of course in Indonesia it's much worse, but the transboundary effect of this you can see at the top here. This is the famous Marina Bay Sands in Singapore. That's how it looks like on a hazy day. And of course, our Twin Towers, Petronas Twin Towers in Malaysia, again on a very hazy day. So, me personally, I grew up in Kuala Lumpur, and actually, I was in school during the really bad haze time. Yeah, or rather, the peak, the worst ever haze that happened in Southeast Asia was in 1997, and that was when I was in secondary one. So very much in my formative years, this was probably the most severe environmental disaster that myself, my family, my friends had faced at the time. Malaysia is quite lucky. We don't have earthquakes, we don't have volcanoes and such, and we don't have typhoons. So this is something that was really, um, really put in our minds as this is like a disaster, a natural disaster. And it very much is a natural disaster. It's dangerous for health, it's bad for the economy, bad for tourism, bad for the environment. And basically, this is something that I had to grow up with. And my brother, for example, has asthma. And so when I was in university, I joining some student seminars and student conferences, I had a chance to sort of choose a topic on which I wanted to go more in depth on. And the topic that became very obvious for me was the haze. And this kind of carried throughout my studies and my career. And today, about 20 years later, I'm still looking into this from the political and social point of view. And of course, this also means that the same problem that existed when I was a child is still occurring now. So there's obviously not only a physical or a scientific issue there, there's also a political, a governance, a social issue as well. So my career has actually been trying to understand this in the various ways that it becomes, that it can be contextualized. So for this particular study, um, it was inspired by actually a cartoon that was published in a newspaper in Malaysia. And this cartoon is what you see here. It appeared in the Malaysian newspaper, The Star, and it's by quite a famous artist or a cartoonist, Reggie Lee, and he drew the four seasons in Malaysia. And if you know Malaysia well, you will know the other seasons as well. Yeah, the monsoon season is when we have our floods. The dengue season is, when the mosquitoes are breeding, and then a lot of people fall sick from dengue. And we have the hay season and the durian season. Of course, this is very different from the normal four seasons that you have in temperate countries. In Malaysia, actually, we are popular. We don't have really a concept of natural seasons. Malaysia is always hot. It's always rainy. We don't have winter. We don't have summer. It's always the same all year round because we are on the equator. So this cartoon actually represented something that made us start thinking, right? Seasons can go beyond what is natural. Seasons is what humans make of it. And of course, obviously, this cartoonist is making his understanding of seasons in Malaysia as such. And what was really interesting then is we actually took an overlay of fire activity in the region across the years. And I'm sure there's no actual correlation, but this is something very, very accidental, perhaps. But it was so apt when you actually overlay the fire activity data, and it kind of fits really nicely into where the hay season falls in this cartoon. It's, I'm sure, a pure coincidence, but it just looks like, wow, what a coincidence. And is there something deeper to this? And I'm sure there is, because the fact that Reggie Lee chose to put the hay season there in the third quarter of the year rather than somewhere else to represent that season there, I think it also reflects on the fact that people expect haze to come in certain months. And that is why that chunk of the picture is located there. So we thought that was really interesting, and we thought that we want to do a bit more of thinking and a bit more research into this, right? How do Malaysians understand this new season, and particularly haze season? And this is also reflected by another quotation, actually an earlier quotation. It may have inspired the comic in the New Straits Times, also another Malaysian newspaper. It's become such a normal part of our lives that children growing up today might not believe that there was a time that we didn't have to breathe smoke particles at least once a year. So now we have a rainy season, a hot season, a durian season, and a haze season. Doesn't really line up with the cartoon, but the concept I think you can appreciate is that the idea here is that something becomes so normal, so normalized, because we are experiencing it year after year after year, that it becomes seasonal. It becomes expected. You are almost waiting for it to come, or you know that it's going to come, because that reflects the original meaning of what a season is. Yeah. And people kind of cannot imagine a world without it. And this is what the quotation was trying to say. Okay, so going back to the basis of seasons and and what does it mean for humans' interaction with nature? So of course, everybody knows, right? The traditional meaning of seasons is usually referring to the four seasons, winter, spring, summer, and fall, which are temporal blocks of the year, typically organized around atmospheric changes. So how the weather changes throughout the year, is divided very roughly into these four distinct seasons. And it reflects the rhythms of life cycles. So the world is sort of having its own rhythm, having its own heartbeat, and we can expect it to keep on like this, yeah, for the foreseeable future. And because it is expected, because we know when winter comes, we know when spring comes, and we know when the following season comes, human activities are influenced by the season. Human activities are interwoven with the rhythms of these seasons, yeah, and the way we dress, the things that we do, the food that we eat, everything is influenced by these seasons. So this is the human nature interaction that we are interested in. Yeah. And this is what we wanted to see. How is this changing, or how is this evolving in the time when humankind is having more and more of an effect on nature? Right. So when we talk about the Anthropocene, it is the idea that now we are living in a time where humans have so much impact, so much effect on the world around us. So this is why we are using this concept of seasons of the Anthropocene. So in the construction of his season, we have come up uh, with this graphical framework of how we want to try and explain how we see this interaction between human and nature in the context of his. So building on the conceptualization of seasons as a rhythm or as a cycle, we argue that his season is constructed in sort of a dual process. So the first is the interaction between natural rhythms and human activities, which construct new seasons. So for example, for his, forest clearance, peatland drainage, slash and burn, all of these human activities are interacting with natural phenomena, which is the dry season, El Nino cycle, all this kind of stuff. So human and nature collide, right? And they create a new reality. And when this new reality keeps coming in a cyclical manner, in a rhythmic manner, the society observes this and they give meaning to it. Yeah, they give meaning to their observed and experienced phenomenon, and they label it as a season. So by doing so, society then will also organize their behavior around this season. Yeah. So they will either shape their behavior to either mitigate, to adapt, or to do nothing, which in turn creates a feedback loop. So human nature interacting will lead to society reacting. So that is the rhythm that is now created because of haze. So before the time of haze, this season did not exist. But now, when it so regularly happens, society has adapted to it, just like how society adapts to winter by dressing differently. So society also adapts in a certain way, in an expected manner, yeah, for haze as well. And this concept has implications, of course, beyond just the haze season, because it kind of indicates that we humans have the potential to create or to induce environmental change in this way. And our actions can actually alter natural systems and have long-lasting effects for many, many years. So for example, for fires, man-made fires, they actually also alter the ecosystem that makes fires in the future more likely. So there's a feedback loop there as well. Once the fire occurs, it is more likely for the fire to be repeated again in the future. So that is even more reinforcing the seasonal patterns that we can observe. So, as I mentioned, this is the second paper in this sort of line of thought. And the first paper, which was led by my colleagues Felicia and Tom, actually started out by looking at something quite simple but quite interesting. They looked at newspaper articles containing either the word haze or the word haze season. So looking at a corpus of newspaper articles, and they divided it according to news articles that use just the word haze and just the phrase haze season. What they wanted to find out was to have an idea whether the phrase haze season, that means the conceptualization of haze as a season, had an effect on how people interacted or responded to the problem. Yeah. So actually, there was a very real effect, which was what they found. Yeah. So they found that articles containing just haze, not using the phrase haze season, focus more on the root causes of haze. So things like fire, right? Clearing, forests, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And you can see the in the graph you can see, yeah. And articles that mentioned haze season focus on the effects of the haze and how people should protect themselves from it. So when you talk about haze season, is more about how it affects the humans, right? And how do humans respond to it? So it's quite different. Just the word attaching the word season to the word haze, it actually has a real effect on how people talk about the problem, what angle people talk about the problem as well. So this suggests that seasonality does play a role in shaping adaptation behavior. So when you talk about haze season, it is a social construct and it can either normalize or enhance preparedness for haze. Yeah, and then so we thought that we want to go a bit deeper into this, like how does it actually, how can you determine whether this idea of haze season further normalizes or leads to preparedness and stuff like that. So this is what actually inspired the paper that I'm talking to you about today, right? So this paper takes the angle of, has the haze season being politicized, or to what extent or how, yeah, is the haze season being politicized? So, as a scholar of transboundary haze for many, many years, of course, this is a given. We understand this really well. Haze is not just a natural or a social problem, it is a political problem. Yeah, different actors have different interests, and these different interests are making it more complicated to resolve the problem of the haze. So we wanted to examine, the big question that we had was, how do different actors measure, make sense, and take actions towards haze? Yeah. And this is essentially a political decision that hinge on the conflicting interests of other actors in the equation. So we wanted to politicize, we wanted to understand, yeah, how the haze season can be politicized, problematized from a political angle. So we went into, or we tried to figure out and categorize who is contributing to the processes that construct the idea of haze season in the society's minds. Yeah, who is actually driving the narrative and how are they talking about the haze season in this region or in Malaysia at least? Motivated by what political objectives and to what environmental and social outcomes? So we wanted to understand the actors, their thinking behind it, and also their strategies and why they are doing so. Yeah, so the political actors involved here. So our methodology, how did we go about this? Storylines is a recognized, how to say, concept in environmental policy discourse, looking at storylines, looking at how, what is the main storyline of a particular message, right? So we were interested in understanding um, how these storylines were interpreted or revealed itself through different types of media. So initially, you already saw that there was a media analysis done. So we did that again, right? A media analysis. We looked at newspaper articles in Malaysia and Indonesia, and we looked at both English, Bahasa Malaysia, which is the local Malaysian language, and also Bahasa Indonesia, which is the Indonesian language. Musim Jerebu is haze season in Malay. Musim Asap is haze season in Indonesia. So if you are familiar with the language, Indonesian and Malaysian languages are very similar. So we can usually understand each other. So we were able to use my knowledge as a Malaysian to also analyze the Indonesian side of things. Yeah. And so once we identified all of the articles that contain these phrases, we identified key quotations and paraphrases by political actors because we wanted to know how these political actors were communicating and try to understand the storyline behind it. And we also looked at quotations from members of the public that appeared in the media analysis because we wanted to see how the public understood it as well. And on top of that, we also had document analysis. We went beyond news. We also looked at policy documents, corporate documents, NGO documents. Same thing. We looked at these three languages, these two countries, and the phrases here. We looked at these documents which contain the phrase. And again, we tried to analyze the context in which the haze season is mentioned and also looked at the quotations and tried to figure out the storyline from there. And from there, we found that there were three main storylines that usually appear. No matter which kind of actor, they usually take one of three storylines depending on the context. Either, number one, the haze keeps coming back, again, reflecting the cyclical nature of the problem. Number two, it will go away. The haze will go away. We just have to wait. Again, also speaking to this seasonal kind of thing. It's here now, but it will go away. And number three, it's normal. It's nothing to be too surprised about, nothing to be too worried about. It's normal. Again, also related to seasonality. Yeah, because seasons, the original meaning of seasons is that it's normal. It's the normal cycle that we all should be used to by now. And after that, we had a further analysis of political objectives, and we identified five main political objectives that drove these storylines, which I'll talk about in a while. So, looking at breaking down these storylines according to the three that we have here, we actually determined that there are several ideas that are quite common, yeah, among the different types of actors using these storylines. So different type of actors interpret and deploy the same storyline, but they do it differently to achieve different political objectives. So what this means is the same storyline can be used by more than one actor for their own political reason. Yeah. So we want to understand how these political actors communicate the meaning they've given to haze season. Yeah. And how they shape their field of opportunities and political options in the face of haze. So, for example, storyline one, it keeps coming back. That means the haze, it will come back. You know, you shouldn't be too happy or too relaxed about the fact that the haze is gone now. It will come back. This storyline has been used by various actors, which I'll go into later, to promote the idea of society needing to be prepared for the haze. Yeah, it also has been used to express frustration towards the failure to eradicate haze. So it keeps coming back. Why does it keep coming back? Yeah, so frustration. Storyline two, it will go away. So the idea that haze is a temporary inconvenience that will be naturally resolved with the arrival of the rain. So don't have to be too worried about it. It will go away. It can also be used, this idea that it will go away, to absolve governments of responsibility for providing adaptation support. So why should the governments be so worried about it? Or why should the government put so much effort into it when it will go away anyway? Right? And storyline three, it is normal. Society is forgetting a time before the haze. So we cannot imagine, like the quote that I shared with you earlier, we cannot imagine a time that haze was not a normal part of the year. Interestingly also, haze, when you think about haze as being normal, it can also be seen as a new opportunity because it is a new reality. So new opportunities like insurance, like air purifiers, these kind of actors do use this kind of an approach. And it also may absolve governments of responsibility for providing mitigation support. So how how do we resolve it? How do we stop it from happening? So the idea is, if it's normal, can we actually hope for it to stop happening? Maybe not. Yeah. So this idea of haze as a season is also very much tied, like I said earlier, to these natural seasons as well, which is the wet and dry season in Southeast Asia. So it is very closely tied to the rainy season. So meaning that you may have fires and you may have smoke during the dry season, but the rainy season will definitely come. And when the rainy season comes, the fires will be put out and everything will normalize. So you see how it is very much tied into this human nature interaction. And that is why it keeps happening year by year. Okay, so now I'm going to break down each of them and give you some examples, yeah, of what we have observed through our media analysis as well as our document analysis. So the first storyline, it keeps coming back. You can see here at the top, we have divided it according to types of actors. So these different types of actors, they all use the same storyline, but for different political objectives. So for example, the governments, they have used this storyline to reinforce their legitimacy, to manage the public's expectations, and also to deflect responsibility. So an example that I've given you here, the first line, a Singapore government quote. Yeah, they said this is somewhat earlier than the usual hay seasons in other years. Yeah, so it keeps coming back, but it's a bit earlier than the usual hay season. But the situation deteriorated sharply within a short period. Nonetheless, given the circumstances, our officers acted swiftly and worked very hard to detect, give warning, and put in place mitigation measures. So they have used this, the fact that it keeps coming back, even though it was a bit early this year, to reinforce their legitimacy. We are a good government. We have done everything we can. We are prepared because we know it's coming back. Yeah. And we will be able to respond to it properly. So this is Singapore government's messaging. Yeah. An example of the messaging or the storyline. For corporate actors, we have observed that they use this storyline to for corporate risk management and also for commoditization. So, for example, here, an insurer in Malaysia. Oh, my apologies, I forgot to mention that we also covered Singapore in the study. Uh, uh, Insurer in Malaysia actually talked about how people should go and see their doctor. Yeah, take time to discuss with your doctor if you need to make any additional preparations to face the haze season. So it's actually taking advantage of the fact that haze keeps coming back. So you better go and see your doctor. You better spend more money on insurance or on medical. Yeah, so it's actually taking advantage of it. And NGOs, they actually use this idea, the frustration that haze keeps coming back, as a reason for mass mobilization. So, for example, here I've taken a quotation from a report by Friends of the Earth Indonesia. The forest and land fires that occur every year are undeniable proof of the government's inability to manage the environment and the powerlessness of the apparatus to enforce environmental laws against large corporations as the main cause of the haze season. So you can see the frustration here. Yeah, haze keeps coming back. It keeps occurring every year, and it shows that the government and the corporates' inability or unwillingness to do anything about it. The second storyline, again, some of the similar actors here. So this idea that haze will go away, it's temporary. Governments use this storyline to deflect responsibility as well as to manage expectations. So, for example, here, the Indonesian government was quoted to say, Indonesia's neighbors should be grateful for the air quality over the other 11 months of the year. So you have 1 month that has bad air, the other 11 months that have good air, and it's thanks to Indonesia. So Indonesia is saying that you shouldn't blame us for that 1 month. Instead, you should be thankful for the other 11 months. So this is a way of deflecting responsibility. And a Malaysian government example, to manage people's expectations, to let people know, yeah, relax, don't get too excited, don't get too worried, it will go away. The haze situation in Malaysia is estimated to improve once the monsoon wind direction changes at the end of September. So it's telling the people, just be patient. Corporate actors also use it the same way to deflect responsibility as well. And for the third storyline, it is normal. Again, we see government and corporate actors using it in different ways. Governments again use this idea that it is normal to reinforce legitimacy, to manage expectations, as well as to deflect responsibility also. So for an example of how the government manages expectations, so here's a quote by the mayor of Kuala Lumpur. Various factors, including seasonal changes, namely the southwest monsoon, dry weather, and open land burning, causes the haze, right? So you can see the focus here is more on the natural phenomenon or the nature. The monsoon, dry weather, and only after that talking about the human element. Yeah, so this is normalization. Yeah, it is normal. You can't do anything about the monsoon. You can't do anything about the dry weather. Yeah, and reinforcing legitimacy. The Malaysian government was quoted by saying, "Our party, this was from a party official, has ensured that the supply of face masks, especially N95, which is the specific face mask that can protect against haze, is sufficient, and no traders are taking advantage by selling at high prices." So it's just another day at the office, yeah, looking at price control. It's nothing extraordinary. Yeah, we know that it's normal, it's happening, people are adapting, people are selling, it's become a natural part of the economy. So we're gonna govern it as per any other part of the economy. And factors, commoditization, yeah. Uh, to talk to using this idea or this storyline that it is normal, yeah. So Samsung, for example, they promote their air conditioner. They say the Samsung Triangle air conditioner will help Malaysians deal with the epidemic of haze season. It's something normal. It's going to happen every year. So you better invest in an air conditioner that is going to protect you for years ahead, because this is a problem that is normalized. So this is the examples that we have detected, yeah, throughout our media and documentary study. So we see here that we can actually say, or we can actually then categorize how these storylines can be used as anchor points to attach divergent political significance to the case. So we can see that for the government, they mostly use it to reinforce legitimacy, manage expectations, and deflect responsibility. The interesting thing is that all three storylines have been used by the government to achieve all three of these political objectives. For plantation companies, the trend is a bit more specific, mostly about deflecting responsibility, because of course, plantation companies are very much held responsible for haze, for fires, because of the way that they clear the land, and it's quite a well-known situation here. Yeah, so plantation companies, they do need to invest a lot of effort into protecting or taking care of their own image and their own, how to say, reputation. So a lot of the times, they are communicating to deflect responsibility. And we can see that the storylines of it will go away and it is normal has been very useful for them. Non-plantation companies, they have used either it keeps coming back or it is normal to either reinforce their legitimacy, or very interestingly, like I mentioned, commoditization. And I think commoditization is interesting, particularly interesting because it shows that the haze season has actually entered into normal economic society, normal, the economy, basically. So once it's entered into the economy, people start investing into products for haze. It shows that it's gonna be around, because people will not, the economy will not support short-term things, right? So I think this is especially interesting, actually. And civil society, interestingly, we only could detect one storyline in most of the civil society's narratives, which is it keeps coming back. And why? This is, of course, because of the nature of civil society, or nature of activism and non-governmental organizations, especially those who are environmentally concerned, is that they don't want haze to come back. So it brings the frustration of why does haze keep coming back, right? So it's using that frustration to push their cause, to say that we don't want haze to come back, but unfortunately it keeps coming back. So that is what we can say as an overall of our analysis. Yeah, we tried to develop this graph to kind of capture the overall analysis. So, in conclusion, uh, as we have seen in our findings, the imbalanced and divergent deployment of seasonality by different actors reflect the current gridlock and challenges in eradicating transboundary haze in Southeast Asia. Yeah, like I said, I've been studying haze for many years, and it is definitely maybe even more of a political problem than actually a natural or a social problem. And so we can see here, examining it through the lens of seasons of the Anthropocene or seasonality, and looking at how different actors use these storylines, really show the challenge. Why is it so difficult for all of these different actors to get their act together and work together to actually manage the haze? Because it's just so complicated, and it is just, there's so much different interests involved, which translate to how different actors all have different responses to the haze. So the politicization of seasonality can actually be a lens for understanding why the haze continues to be a problem until today. If you really look back at the data, the haze first started to be a transnational problem in the early 1980s. So that means it is more than 4 decades. Yeah. So for more than 4 decades, there has been the problem of non-action, or the inability or unwillingness in mitigating and adapting to this example of anthropogenic environmental change. So in the future, yeah, since we are concerned about future Earth in this colloquium, we can expect actually to see haze as one example, but maybe new seasons of the Anthropocene will emerge. Haze is only something, an indicator of trends to come. Yeah. Often in climate vulnerable geographies. So we must reflect on the politics behind all of these seasons so that we understand it better, and to understand how it actually implicates our building of a livable future. So one of the examples of another season of the Anthropocene is the rubbish season in Bali, for example, depending on the ins and outs of the tide, right? And also interacting with tourist season, yeah, with human waste, it has created this new season of rubbish season. So these are some of the other things that we can also consider when we think about seasons of the Anthropocene. So that is what I wanted to share with you today. So my email is here, and that is the link to the full paper. It is free to read at the moment.